The bad news is we still have not come up with a way to combat the threat.
Right.
So whether it's in the disinformation space, whether it's regulating troll accounts, bot accounts, spreading mass disinformation in social media, or whether it's even the more insidious and aggressive attacks targeting energy infrastructure, targeting political parties, targeting elections, also targeting individual politicians. These threats now we see them, so that's progress, but they're still, whether in Europe or Asia or the Middle East or Africa, we are not protecting ourselves against these threats very effectively. Our politicians and our bureaucrats, they're not techies. They're not,
Right.
I mean, the vast majority are not techies, are not coming from an engineering or a cybersecurity background. So by the time they even wrap their heads around the problem,
It's too big.
it's too late. So we need the people who really are the experts, who know exactly what's up, to take the first step, and then help the governments to come along with the resources to scale.
Got it. Yeah, hi, my name is Augustine. Welcome to the Cyber Express. Great session.
Thanks.
A very beautiful one, actually. One of the most powerful one actually since morning.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Must confess that. So I think one of the things that you stressed about, first thing, was that, cybersecurity is national security at the end of the day. But then there is still a lack of understanding, lack of, seriousness among so many countries. So would you like to elaborate on that and then begin this?
Sure. Well, the good news is a lot of countries have now understood how serious and how critical the situation is. The bad news is we still have not come up with a way to combat the threat.
Right.
So whether it's in the disinformation space, whether it's regulating troll accounts, bot accounts, spreading mass disinformation in social media, or whether it's even the more insidious and aggressive attacks targeting energy infrastructure, targeting political parties, targeting elections, also targeting individual politicians. These threats now we see them, so that's progress, but they're still, whether in Europe or Asia or the Middle East or Africa, we are not protecting ourselves against these threats very effectively. So what we really need is not only an increased awareness from the public and with our politicians, but we need private sector actors who understand much better than anyone else
Right.
what's at stake and also what it takes to actually combat these things on a technical level to take the first step.
Got it. Because I think that is one of the problems. Because I think whenever we are talking about collaborations, especially among hackers, in fact, I think right now there are at least more than 50 hacking groups that are supporting Russia, and then there's 36 for Ukraine. So it's cyber warfare already going on.
Yeah.
But then these hackers are collaborating. But then when you look at individual private sector cybersecurity companies, big ones, there is still a lack of collaboration. That's basically my deduction. Correct me if you think otherwise.
That's been my impression as well. People are talking about it and thinking about it, but they don't have the mechanism to do it.
Right.
They're usually competing with each other for clients, for projects.
Exactly,
They're not used to saying, let's do this together.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that's lacking. So you did mention touch base upon, or basically one of those highlights of the keynote was around the fact of having a cybersecurity task force, especially to address this. So would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, thanks. What I propose is that the technical community, the kinds of cybersecurity companies that are sitting upstairs in this conference right now, to have a core coalition to agree amongst themselves, we are going to work together on this problem.
Right.
So they can still compete and do their normal work in all their other areas. But on the issue of defending democracy and the public information space, that is the bedrock of our peaceful and democratic or aspiring quasi-democratic societies, that this is a public good that needs to be protected, and that it's not about money at that point.
Right.
So yeah, someone needs to pay for it, but this cannot be a profit play at this time. We need to be able to invest in our defense in cyberspace, just like we invest in our defense in the physical world. And this, I think, from the private sector side, for this coalition to first come to terms with each other and agree to play together, to see who has what resources at their disposal, what capacities. On the technical level, this is where it's out of my pay grade, but to say, okay, this is what it would take to actually implement something like this.
Right.
Then you can go to the public sector, whether it's, here starting first at the national or the regional level, and say, we're committed to doing this. This would be the initial budget. These would be the outcomes. We're basically doing your job for you, dear government. Right. You need us, and we need this. And then when you've had this in place, when you have a prototype, an MVP version, so to speak, then this is where, just at a kind of political and bureaucratic level, then in the case of Europe, you can go to the European Union and seek long-term financing. And so these processes take time, but there's political will and there is indeed public financing available to do this kind of work. But we need industry to take the first step because, speaking as someone who comes originally from public sector space, our politicians and our bureaucrats, they're not techies. They're not, right. I mean, the vast majority are not techies, are not coming from an engineering or a cybersecurity background. So by the time they even wrap their heads around the problem,
it's too big.
It's too late. So we need the people who really are the experts, who know exactly what's up to take the first step, and then help the governments to come along with the resources to scale.
Got it. And with GDPR being one of the first, pivotal step in protecting privacy across the world, do you think EU is also, if EU steps up and then builds a task force, this can be the route? Yeah,
that's a really great example. Exactly. The EU can be a leader in this space. It can be a leader by following the private sector first. Okay, by learning from and taking the lead from the technical experts, and then putting the regulatory, financial, and legal structure around it to protect it. We definitely need new regulation for social media platforms, for example.
Right.
We've really seen that free speech isn't free.
Right.
There is a huge price tag.
Right. And the disinformation campaigns that's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you tweeted this, I think, a couple of days ago.
Oh, he's going through my social media. I'm going to get in trouble.
No, but it's actually pretty relevant. This was entirely around the part of Ukraine joining the NATO, and then and a couple of things, like there are people who businessmen and politicians who are appeased. Yeah. And so will they land in trouble? I mean, there are a lot of elephants that you actually wanted to address. So would you share, do you want to talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, accountability, right? Again, the good news and bad news. The good news is, because of this invasion, because of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we now see no one can deny, and no one with eyes in their head at least can deny, that this was Russia's desire and plan all along.
Right.
To destroy Ukraine as a nation, as a people. Their goal is genocide. And they have been saying this for years. It wasn't a secret. And for anybody who maybe doesn't know so much about the history of genocides in general and how they work, this is actually following a very consistent pattern. Hitler and the Nazis, they also were very public about their intentions. The Rwandan genocide as well, the Hutu extremist government, they said exactly what they wanted to do. And then they did it. And now it's happening again with Russia. And we, especially in Western countries, not only, but especially in the West, now we are having to look in the mirror and say, for 20 years, more than 20 years, we did business with this government, we financed them, we got into bed with them, we blocked Ukrainian NATO membership, we supported Russia diplomatically, we told the Eastern Europeans and the Ukrainians to calm down and not be so paranoid, and we were wrong. And there's a spectrum of guilt and a spectrum of complicity on this. There are some politicians and businesses who were complicit out of ignorance, out of naivete, out of hopefulness, right, or some combination of the three. But then you also have people who were straight up corrupted,
Right.
who knew exactly what was going on and who let it happen and who helped make it happen. And between those two extremes of innocently ignorant and stupid and naive and, criminally complicit and corrupt, we need to first investigate and understand who did what, when, and why, and then hold those who are criminally accountable to account. And for those who made bad decisions but were not making criminal decisions, well, I would think at the minimum they maybe shouldn't be in charge of national security policy anymore, just to put it in a friendly way. We have a real problem in a lot of, especially Western European countries, that the people who got us into this mess and who had been getting it wrong for the last 10, 20 years, they're still driving the bus. So it's part of why the response has been so slow.
Okay, so ever since the conversation about the NATO happened, there has actually been increased attacks by supporters of Russia in the cyber warfare domain on the allied countries. So do you think this might become an impediment for future support?
Yeah. So yes, Russia and China, let's be honest, they will target Ukraine's allies, but they've already been targeting them before as well.
Right,
so it's not new.
But it increased.
It will increase. Yeah, exactly. It has increased. It will increase. And this just underscores how important it is for our countries to take action now.
Right.
And to make this kind of task force embedded into our national and collective international security strategies. The fact that we left the door open and then we're surprised that robbers came in and stole our stuff and trashed the house.
Right.
Well, you did leave the door open, and it would be funny if it wasn't so serious. But what did we expect? So now we know what's out there. We need to act, and if we don't, well, at least nobody can say we weren't warned. And this is also a real challenge, because one thing that dictators, authoritarian regimes have going for them is time. When you're not worried about an election cycle, when you have the whole power of the state, the money, the resources behind you, well, you can make your long-term strategy and then just execute it. Whereas in democratic societies, our politicians, they're thinking about the next election. They've got tons of interests that they have to balance. So the great strengths of our societies become a weakness in our ability to implement a long-term security strategy. And this just means we need to get smarter. And also why I think we need the private sector to take the lead in, giving us a kickstart on these topics, because we cannot wait for the slow gears and machinery of ministries to come up with a plan for this. We need to think more like a startup and say, all right, it's a hackathon. Let's spit this out.
Got it. So finally, a lot of countries have taken a neutral stand. Okay. So if there is one message that you want out there, what will that be?
There is no such thing as neutrality in a conflict like this. There's a famous quote by Elie Wiesel, who is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, who was a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust. And he said, I don't have the exact quote in my mind, but paraphrasing, he said, neutrality only benefits the aggressor. So silence never helps the victim. If someone is trying to murder you in the street and I just watch and I do nothing, I'm not being neutral. I'm letting him get away with your murder. So even to speak out, even if I don't have the strength to fight him off, I can call for help. I can do something. So even just raising the voice in support is helping. I know some countries, for a variety of economic and strategic reasons, they're scared right now, or they're having also conflicting political and economic interests. They're needing to balance, but this is where I think also the voices of people in countries who have tried to stay neutral in this war matter so much, because sometimes governments and our leaders maybe won't be on the right side. I'm from Germany. My government was also, in my mind, not on the right side for a lot of last year in our behavior. But what I hear again and again from Ukrainian friends and colleagues is it matters when they hear the voices of the people. Even if the government leaders are being slow, even if the government leaders are being against and supporting Russia, let the people make their voices heard, use social media, speak out, donate, even if it's $1. You know, the symbol matters, because when we collectively show which side we are on, it is boosting the whole, also the political space. It is boosting the ability of governments to see that there is support for Ukraine, that people care. And this is maybe the first hurdle. So I would encourage anyone in your audience who's from a quote unquote neutral country to remember there is no neutrality in a fight like this. And even the little things you do, they really make a difference.
All right. Thank you so much. It was amazing talking to you.
Really nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.